I actually hate stretching, but I hate back pain even more. The reason I stretched was completely for back pain relief. And my goal with stretching was to get out of my back pain and get out of it as quick as possible because I don't like stretching. So today I can touch my toes pretty easily. And I stretch maybe twice a week, sometimes once, sometimes 0 times, and this is how I got there. All right, so the 2 principles I used to get here, and mind you, when I started, I was probably here, and here hurt. So like, now that I'm here, it's quite a big difference. And the 2 principles I use to get here are 1, open the hips, and 2, stretch with load. And the first principle of open the hips is actually gonna be attacking the hip flexor muscles on the front of the body. And the reason for this is because the hip flexors and the hamstrings are antagonist muscles that fight for pelvic position. So if one side is way too tight, the other can't loosen, or else your pelvis would get out of alignment. So usually they get tight together and they stay tight together. To open the hips, we're gonna first activate the hip flexor muscles, especially the psoas and iliacus ones. To do this, you can just sit down pretty easily and do some nice little hip flexor crunches. If you're more advanced, keep the legs straight. Try to keep a relatively neutral posture. You don't need to be too exaggerated about it, but do some nice reps to get this muscle activated. Just do 10 to 15 on each side. It's gonna feel a lot more fluid and it's gonna be a lot more susceptible to stretch in the next step we're about to do. All right, after your 10 to 15 of those, we're gonna move right into the split stretch. And the split stretch is probably my favorite hip flexor, maybe total stretch overall, because it stretches the hip flexors on this side and the hamstrings on this side at the exact same time. So if you're like really in the pain cave and your back's just super angry at you, every type of movement hurts, split stretch is great because it keeps your spine actually neutral. So instead of folding over or doing like an upward dog pose, which may be painful for your lower back, the split stretch usually 9.9 out of 10 times is gonna be very safe and okay. For this part of our toe touch hip flexor opener routine, we're gonna focus more on the hip flexor muscles on this side. So we don't wanna fold over too much. We actually wanna be a little bit more upright where we get a deeper stretch in the hip flexor muscles here. Engaging this glute in the back always helps. And we wanna hold this for about 60 to 90 seconds. And if you're really bored and you hate just sitting in one position, feel free to work in a little flossing motion to help pass the time, make it less boring. You absolutely want to do this on both sides. There's a good chance that one's gonna feel a little weirder or tighter than the other. Just spend the same amount of time on both sides, and after a couple sessions of this, it'll just even and iron out pretty quickly. All right, so now that our hips are open, we can actually get to the hamstring stretch parts where the gains are made. And there's 2 ways you can go about stretching the hamstrings with load. I like breaking them up into straight back and round back exercises. So especially if you have like a disc injury or you're just really flexion intolerant, so like rounding the back hurts a ton, the straight back exercise might be a place to start until you loosen up this area a little bit, and then you can work in the rounded back exercise as well. But first, for straight back, there's kind of 2 ways to do this, again, depending on what your level of pain is and kind of where you are on your pain relief journey. The easiest way to do a straight back exercise under load is going to be elevating the leg like this, and then having a very straight neutral posture, and then pushing in and out of your hamstring stretch as far as you possibly can. And these reps are kind of grueling. Like, the goal of this is to basically torture and stretch your hamstring at the end of its load, because especially if you haven't stretched for a long time, or if you're just old or you never use your legs, like, your hamstrings don't know that they need to work here. So you gotta force them into length submission by doing these little floss reps. And you can have a slight knee bend because we really want to torture the hamstring here. The rest is just kind of a byproduct. But we want to spend about 8 really good reps, spending 3 to 5 seconds at the end. Range of motion here. Oh my gosh. I feel like I just gained a foot of length in that set alone. But we want to do this on both sides. So if you're really in the pain cave, this is going to be the best place to start. This isn't the most potent straight back hamstring stretch, but it is a great one. If you're a little bit more advanced, I would grab a weight and do weighted RDL pulses. So what that's going to look like is just pushing your hips way back. If you can hold the weight even better, like just 10 to 20 pounds would be plenty, and then come back up. You don't even need to come back up all the way, because all we care about is the end range for our hamstring. So we want to basically hang out here and spend a lot of time here, For the RDL pulse reps, I like holding it for 3 to 5 seconds at the bottom. And again, that's gonna feel like an eternity. Like especially if you haven't stretched your hamstrings for a while, like it's gonna be quite painful. So make sure to really focus, expect the mobility sweats here, and crank out 8 to 10 reps of these 3 to 5 second pause pulses. All right, and lastly, my favorite and most potent hamstring stretch is gonna be a rounded back exercise that I call, or Ben Patrick specifically calls, the elephant walk. And this was, once I found this, like I fell in love with it. Like this is, if I'm only gonna do like 2 or 3 stretches in a week, like this is always one of them, because it helps me maintain a ton of hamstring length with not a lot of work. So for the elephant walk, we wanna get to our kind of end range of motion, depending on where we are. I'm gonna just be right here. And then we wanna alternate stretching each leg in a floss manner like this. So we want to keep our heel on the ground and just kind of shoot our knee back and contract the quad slightly, and do this for a total of 40 reps, so 20 on each leg, which again is going to feel like a freaking eternity. But this is how the gains are made and how they're made fast. So eventually you'll be able to just put your feet under, and then you can bend even more. And then next thing you know, you touched on the ground, no problem. All right, now for scheduling these into your life, if you're like me and you want to get out of this problem as quick as possible and not deal with it again, I would do this whole system. So the hip flexor system of activation plus stretch, and then the hamstring load system of straight back plus round back, twice a day for 3 days. And yeah, like that's a lot of volume to do for 3 days, but that's gonna create an adaptation and a stimulus in your body that's gonna basically tell your brain and tell your muscles that these need to lengthen. This is a problem that we need to adapt to and solve. Now, after you do this twice a day for 3 days, this might expose another weakness or might not completely solve your back pain, but this is gonna get you one step closer, because the back pain relief journey is basically knocking over bricks that could potentially be causing your pain. Like it might expose a weakness, it might expose a stiffness in a different muscle, but the sooner we start knocking over bricks, the sooner we're gonna get to actual back pain relief. And then after doing this twice a day for 3 days, you really only need to do it once a week to maintain it. So if you wanna be able to still touch your toes and keep this flexibility long term, like if you just do elephant walks and split stretches once a week for the rest of your life, like focused, intense sets of them, like you'll keep this forever. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you align with the mission of fixing the muscles, fixing the pain, creating the best back pain relief content on the planet, consider subscribing, leave a comment on what you wanna see next, and we'll see you in the next one.